Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Outlaw Nation. I am John Rocha, the founder, creator, CEO of the Outlaw Nation, and rabid Star Wars fan wearing my Kenobi and Sith here. A little samurai action going on. Got that off T Public here because I'm so excited about this article that dropped this morning in Vanity Fair profiling the Star Wars series that are coming here to Disney Plus. Here we're talking Obi-Wan Kenobi, talking Ahsoka Tano. There's more on Andor. They talk about the Mandalorian and the new season coming up, Mandalorian. They even mentioned the Acolyte, and we've got some interesting quotes and comments throughout the article. Now, those of you who know my channel and know what I do on here and enjoy what I do on here, you know that I take my time navigating through some articles. I did this on the Joss Whedon article. I almost did it on the Michael Waldron article for that he came out and was defending his writing for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but I didn't jump in to do that one. But I am jumping in to do this one because I was just excited to get into this and talk about it and share it with you all. I have not read the full article, so some of the quotes I've read this morning and have some thoughts on and whatever as we get to them, but I'm just going to take it beat by beat, paragraph by paragraph through the article, talk about it, react to it, see what comes up for me. And of course, I want to hear from you all there in the chat. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you are catching from the article, what you're feeling from the article. And of course, the Streamlabs and the Super Chats are open. If you got something powerful you want to say about this article, send it to me through the Streamlabs and the Super Chats. You see the address. Well, I'll pin the address in the chat, and I'll put it out there for you all to see as well if you want to send in stuff to Streamlabs. It's already in the description of this video, I believe. All right, so let's do that first before I get going so we don't mess up anything here. But what are your reactions for all of you? Tell me your reactions there in the chat of what you felt as you were reading this article, as you were looking through this article. What stood out to you? What jumped out at you? Because I mean, so much was covered here with Diego Luna kind of starting it off, which we're going to get into in just a second, but also some interesting quotes from Kathleen Kennedy that are making the rounds now. Her thoughts on the Solo situation, the movie that came out, and essentially kind of blaming Alden Ehrenreich is what I seem to be seeing from a lot of people through her comments, and not blaming herself for changing horses midstream and jumping off the Lord and Miller train and bringing in Ron Howard with the film 3/4 of the way done, or 7/8 of the way done, whatever you want to say, 6/8 of the way done, and completely reversing that. So taking no real blame on that, instead blaming the audience that they didn't respond well to them recasting it. And I'll get to my thoughts on that in just a second. But it's just fascinating to hear all that and what she was thinking and what she was feeling. And what she felt about it all, and what we're getting from Filoni and Deborah Chow and everybody involved in this. I'm very, very curious to see what more is going to come out, because the repercussions have been really strong that I've seen on social media from a number of people about how this is all going down and how this is being received by a number of people as well. So we shall see as we look through this what we're going to get. All right, so we are 3 minutes. I'm going to win another 2 more minutes, get a few more people in here. We only have like 30 people in here right now. Hopefully we'll get to 100 or 200 as people are watching or catching on that I'm going live to talk about this and talk about the article. Did you see all the pictures? I mean, the pictures are absolutely glorious here from Annie Leibovitz. She did just an absolutely wonderful job, and we will look through the pictures as we go through the article. But let's just tease them now before we read it. Let's take a look at these pictures first and make sure I've got it squared away here. There it is. All right. And adjusting my screen so you see a little bit more of what we're talking about here. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, here we go. Should we do it this way? Yeah, let's do it this way a little bit, and then we'll for the pictures, and then we'll swing back over to the article itself for the reading of it. Okay, but first let's talk about this cover here. I mean, this cover is just absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, for me, I've already tweeted about this morning. As a Latino, this is just a heck of a thing to really grasp here, as you have from left to right, Rosario Dawson, Pedro Pascal. Yes, Ewan McGregor looking like Jesus over there, as my friend Kate Sanchez said on Twitter. And then on the right, you're seeing Diego Luna, who, of course, is leading Andor. Pedro Pascal leading The Mandalorian. Rosario Dawson leading Ahsoka Tano. So great to see such Latinx flavor all over this cover. I love the blue cover as well, giving you that tint of coolness, but a strong coolness, which I really enjoy. And I love them taking this quote here: "The rebellion will be televised. Some of you might remember that quote, "The revolution will not be televised," which Public Enemy kind of made popular, but was a phrase, I think, in the 1970s or 1960s, spoken by a civil rights activist talking about the revolution not being televised. I like to turn a phrase here. It says, "Inside the master plan for a fleet of new shows." And of course, as I said, exclusive photography by Annie Leibovitz and the great Anthony Breznican doing this article. Some of you remember him from EW. He was a guest on Jedi Council a few times there with Christian. So you know the man is steeped in the world of Star Wars. So a good guy to be writing this article for sure. Let's hit some more of these pictures. Look at the glory. Well, let's look at the gloriousness first. Gloriousness of this one. I mean, Genevieve O'Reilly over here is Mon Mothma. How gorgeous does she look in that shot? How regal, how noble, how strong, yet, very powerfully feminine as well. A great shot here. And Diego Luna right next to her looking like a roguish a sex pot, as my friend Mike Shea described there. Look at him just kind of looking over there going, yeah, what's up? I'm cashing. Let's do this. And then right there, the strength and the power of Pedro Pascal as he's holding the Mandalorian helmet there as Din Djarin. And look at the look on his face. Real serious, real focused approach. Some people say, oh, well, we rarely see his face. But, the acting that he's doing with his voice. And then when we do see him take off the helmet, there's such power to that. And then Rosario Dawson, who has spoken glowingly about the honor she feels about bringing Ahsoka Tano to life in live action. So great to see her looking powerfully there with both of those lightsabers. Let's move over to this shot. Look at this shot here. I assume that's Hayden Christensen in the Darth Vader outfit, in the costume, rather. They're looking very powerful and regal. And then in the middle, and scary and dangerous and chilling. And there in the middle, Moses Ingram as Rebbe. Look at I love that lightsaber that she's got, the two-bladed circular lightsaber that she's going to be using. We've seen already in a number of trailers. And then Ewan McGregor there, a no lightsaber. Very curious shot there. No lightsaber. A lot of people sensing that we're not going to see him use his lightsaber a lot. Of course, we've heard the interviews and we've seen the quotes saying that he is going to be a man in flux, a man who's destroyed or distraught about what is going on in his world and what is going on in his faith of the Jedi, and is broken a little bit by what he's seeing. All right, we've got 45 of you joining me right now. Thanks so much. Please remember to hit a like on this video as you're coming on to enjoy what we're going to be talking about here. We're going to be going paragraph by paragraph through the article to talk about it all. So I appreciate you all hanging out with me. And let's move on to some other. I know there's a video which I will maybe do a reaction to later on today. We shall see. And then, of course, this shot here of Anakin, of Hayden Christensen doing a little fight training. Look at the flare of the cape behind him. So clearly we are going to get, as Kathleen Kennedy has promised, we are going to get this battle. It's not going to let us down. It's going to be a rematch. I wonder how they're going to fit this into the overall chronological timeline of Star Wars, considering what was said in A New Hope. And a lot of people have brought up, last time you saw me, I was but the student. I am now the master. All these things that changed. It seems like in retrospect, as you're looking at this. So great shot of Hayden Christensen here getting ready. And I love the fan down there, the wind machine, kind of getting him in the place to understand what's going to be happening on set when they shoot this fight and the effects. But also back up here, somebody has commented. I saw that it looks like he still has the high ground. Ewan does, but I don't know if Obi-Wan has the high ground necessarily, because Vader's helmet is sticking out from the top there, so it feels like he still has somewhat the high ground, even though if you look at their feet, it might look like Kenobi's a little further ahead than Vader, but we shall see. And another shot here that they've got in this article of Kathleen Kennedy, Deborah Chow, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni. Beautiful shot there, of course, around what they've been using there to shoot all the stuff they've been shooting over the last few years there in Star Wars on the series. You see what I still call in my mind sometimes the Slave One there behind, little picture there, and of course what looks like maybe an engine in the back there of something, maybe from an X-Wing, maybe from a TIE fighter, I'm not really sure. And the number of the production staff there Everyone looking in, Filoni and Favreau looking at us, Deborah Chow looking that way, Kathleen Kennedy looking that way. But yeah, really cool stuff. Love the white Adidas from Favreau. I own a pair of those. Those are nice to wear every once in a while. So I like this look as well, what they're using. And look at the 4 screens. All of that is really, really cool. And then down here, the shot this is like the money shot, right? I mean, as great as the cover is, as great as those other shots have been, this is just a fantastic shot of Favreau. Let me make it a little bit smaller here. Favreau with his creation, which is so cool to see. I guess I can't get I guess that's as small as it gets for right now. But yeah, with his with the baby Yoda, with Grogu there. Look at the sweet face on Grogu. So sweet. Favreau looking on there and seeing just a beautiful shot there, and the green wash, and that almost looks like Haley Fouch in the background there. I don't know about anybody else, but it looks a little bit like Haley Fouch in the background there. But loving the green here, giving that vibe, that Luke Skywalker lightsaber vibe. I dig it completely. So pretty cool to see those pictures there. And I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna read through this article, react to it. Let me know what you think, what stood out to you, what's standing out to you as you're looking at this article as well. So I'm open to all of it, and we'll go from there. So I think we've got it, 10 minutes in. Let's get into it. Let's read this article and I'll give you my thoughts, and I'll probably be taking drinks as I go along here because it's a pretty long article. And hopefully you guys can hang out for the next 30, 40 minutes as we discuss it and talk about it. And like I said, the Streamlabs, the Super Chats are open. If there's something you want to say, something you want me to talk about, I will check the Streamlabs periodically as we go through this article to make sure I'm not missing anybody's comments or questions or thoughts about it all. And any support you want to send as we go along through the show here would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's do this thing here. And Travis Earl already sent one Streamlab in. He said, someone pointed out on Screen Rant that Kenobi says in Return of the Jedi, I tried to turn him back from the dark side and failed. So a second Obi-Wan Vader encounter after Sith is actually alluded to in the original trilogy. Well, yes, in a very vague allusion. So not that, I battled him or I fought him and I had to, and he still kept going down the path. So you can make things work. You can certainly make certain quotes fit to make it possible. So you're right to point that out, Travis. It looks like they might be able to use original trilogy dialogue to get there and avoid the complaints that some people have been hearing. And one last thing, if it's your first time visiting the channel, please do me a favor and hit a like on this video and share it. Oh, no, it's not share it. Subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that Outlaw Nation subscribe button down there and hit that bell button so you see more dropping surprise content like we're doing right now. Look, I was starting to read the article and I was like, you know what? I want to read this along with everybody else, see who wants to join me and read it with me. And maybe later some people are going to watch as well after we record live. I don't know. I was in the mood to go live on YouTube. So I didn't plan it out or give a few hours notice. I was just in the mood. So sometimes you'll get those content, that kind of content from me when you subscribe. The bell will let you know when I'm going live with things like this. So, all right, let's jump into it now. Let's look at this article here. All right, so it starts out. It's, as I said, Star Wars, The Rebellion will be televised. An exclusive look at the master plan for Obi-Wan Kenobi with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen, Andor with Diego Luna, Ahsoka with Rosario Dawson, and a fleet of new shows. All right, let me make sure. All right, we're looking. We should make that bigger, shouldn't we? We should make that bigger. Yeah, there we go. That way you guys can follow along with me as we look at it all. All right. It says right here, Diego Luna couldn't trust the driver. He didn't think he could trust anybody. And hadn't he read something about an epidemic of eavesdroppers hacking phones? Certainly there was a lot of that going on during the sequel trilogy. That was just my paranoia, the actor says now, not connected to reality. Still, he pressed his phone so tightly to his ear that it made his face hot as a voice from thousands of miles away told him secrets from another galaxy. The car was stuck in traffic on the top tier of a double-decker highway in Mexico City. I was speaking in code words because I was trying not to say too much in the car, says Luna. The words he was avoiding most strenuously were Star and Wars. Luna had played the dauntless rebel spy Cassian Andor in the 2016 film Rogue One. Now, on the other end of the phone was Tony Gilroy, who had punched up the movie's script for reshoots. Gilroy, whose credits include writing the first 4 Bourne thrillers and writing and directing Michael Clayton, good film you can watch on HBO Max right now, was developing a series that would explore Andor's backstory, revealing what drew him into the Galactic Rebellion and how he evolved from a self-serving nihilist into a selfless martyr. What an interesting path to be taken with this series of Andor. Great to hear some more about what we're going to be seeing the show show us when we get a chance to see it later on this year. Luna's call with Gilroy, the first time he heard the full plan for the Andor story, happened more than 3 years ago. One thing I remember from being part of this since day one is how little you can share of what happened, says the actor. I have kids, man. It's painful for them and for me. Yeah, I would imagine so for a lot of people. They've confronted that. All right, let me see. I don't want to have the video there because I might get in trouble with that. Too much of that plays. George Lucas himself had attempted and abandoned a live-action Star Wars series called Underworld. Do you remember that? I've referenced that in previous Star Wars shows on numerous other outlets, the prospect of Underworld, because I've always enjoyed the darker, seedier, more criminal side of things in Star Wars that adds more depth and complexity to a world it's not just about good versus evil. There's a lot of gray, and Underworld seemed like it was going to have some of that gray. I think there was like 60 scripts that were written or something like that. I think it was going to be on ABC, but at the time they didn't have enough money to fund what George Lucas wanted to do with that series. Now, it's a live action Star Wars series called Underworld before he sold Lucasfilm to the Walt Disney Company in 2012. Scripts were written and test footage shot, but the level of quality he was looking for proved to be too expensive for a TV budget. Then in 2017, Lucasfilm was tasked with trying again, this time making not one series, but a whole fleet to bolster its parent company's streaming ambitions. Disney Plus would need the firepower of many Star Wars shows to compete against rival titans like Netflix and Amazon. And certainly that is happening now for sure, as Netflix is starting to take some losses here. And Amazon Prime still has one of the worst navigating homepages ever, whereas Disney Plus is much more succinct and clear, and you know where everything is. The Mandalorian, we know now, became a global phenomenon, which only raised expectations. That's natural. This winter, the Book of Boba Fett delivered a redemption story nearly 4 decades after the title character's apparent demise in Return of the Jedi. Now, with 130 million subscribers waiting, Disney has upped its demands to 3 separate Star Wars shows within a year. For this story, Lucasfilm has lifted the secrecy surrounding its TV universe and how it formed, as universes do, under immense pressure. So nice writing there by Anthony Breznican. And remember, it wasn't that long ago we were debating on, Jedi Council when I was over there. I collided with Christian and all them, like getting on to the show and hearing about, should we do 2 Star Wars movies in a year? A lot of people feel we should do one and wait a few years and then do another one. But a lot of people like, give me more Star Wars content. So certainly it feels like these series have been the happy medium between the people who don't want 2 or 3 Star Wars movies a year, but are open to having 2 or 3 series in a year. And the people who want 2 or 3 movies a year, this kind of keeps them still hooked on the Star Wars train for sure. All right, let's move on to the rest of this. First up is Ewan McGregor's return to his role as a weary Jedi Master in exile. Obi-Wan Kenobi debuts May 27th, tracking the character 10 years into his time on the desert world of Tatooine, where he serves as a distant guardian to young Luke Skywalker and is hunted by a dark side inquisitor named Rebbe, who of course is played by Moses Ingram, who we saw in the picture already. We've seen a number of trailers already as well, looking badass. Luna Spy Saga, Andor saga, hit screens late this summer. All right, season 3 of The Mandalorian, reuniting Pedro Pascal's helmeted gunfighter with his little green ward, who, drops in late 2022 or early 2023. So according to the article, we might still be getting The Mandalorian later on this year. Kind of curious, they haven't even announced it, and we're in May. We're in the 5th month. So maybe, I imagine, at Star Wars Celebration next week, we will get a concrete announcement of when the show is coming out. Next year, Rosario Dawson will lead the series, Ahsoka, playing the live-action version of a fan favorite Force wielder from animation who was once an apprentice to Anakin Skywalker. That's right. Slightly further off is the Acolyte. Interesting. With a tale set about a century before the era of the Skywalkers. Fascinating. We haven't heard too much about Acolyte, so nice to see it kind of referenced here. It's a bountiful time to be a Star Wars obsessive, to say the least. McGregor, who wrestled with joining the galaxy in the late 1990s and wrestled again with Whether to Return, says the gig has saturated his life. My partner, Mary, that's Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is doing that Star Wars series with Rosario, and she's about to start, he says. Lucasfilm hadn't previously confirmed rumors that Mary Elizabeth Winstead will be in Ahsoka, but Now they don't have to. Our little boy has been born into this massive Star Wars family, says McGregor, whose son with Winstead was born last summer. He will either embrace it or really go the other way. I don't know. Maybe he'll be a Trekkie. Wouldn't that be something? And we've seen that happen in houses. Sometimes kids rebel against their parents and go and be a fan of something else. Certainly in sports families, that happens all the time. It certainly happened in my house. My dad was a Dallas Cowboys fan. I became a Washington Redskins fan, or Washington Commanders fan, I guess now, because I grew up in DC, or near DC, so I gave an affinity. So it happens in sports families. Why wouldn't it happen in nerd and geek families as well? On that day in mid 2019, so we're back to the conversation from earlier when Diego was on the phone. When Luna was recruited for Andor, the actor remembers looking out the car window at the rooftops of the adjacent buildings, visualizing the tale about resistance-minded spies and near-death escapes. He was especially glad that Gilroy's proposal included details that resonated personally. Luna describes Andor as a refugee story, with desperate people fleeing the Empire at the full force of its power. It's the journey of a migrant, he says. That feeling of having to move is behind this story, very profoundly and very strong. That shapes you as a person. It defines you in many ways and what you are willing to do. I mean, I think this is such a powerful set of lines from Diego Luna to say about what he wants to do with Cassian Andor, how he sees Cassian Andor, what we'll be seeing in the series as well. I really appreciate that as the son of two immigrants or migrants who left Bolivia in South America to come to this country and build a better life and raised me to love their home country and my country. It's great to hear this and what they experience. You know, nowadays we're seeing so much nasty political rhetoric aimed at painting brown people with one brush and making them seem like the enemy and the criminals who are crossing over and taking jobs and taking your women and taking political clout and all this nonsense we see all around for people who need to paint immigrants or people who come over to this country looking for a better life in a certain light in order for them to achieve or attain or keep political power, which is really a shame. So hopefully this is a series that will change some minds, change some ideas, some young minds, some young ideas to be a bit more open and receptive and caring and understanding that we are all, if we believe in God, we are all God's children, regardless of borders. And I think that's really important. And I love that Diego has taken that approach as a Latino who understands that in his own life. Gilroy breathes deep and reveals a little more about Andor. This guy gave his life for the galaxy, right? I mean, he consciously, soberly, without vanity or recognition, sacrificed himself. Who does that? That's what this first season is about. It's about him being really revolution averse and cynical and lost and kind of a mess. Sounds familiar a little bit to Kenobi, who's a bit of a mess as well and having his questions about his faith in the Jedi. Shaken, the story begins with the destruction of Andor's birth world, then follows him into adulthood when he realizes he can't run forever. His adopted home will become the base of our whole first season, and we watch that place become radicalized. Very interesting. Then we see another planet that's completely taken apart in a colonial kind of way. The Empire is expanding rapidly. They're wiping out anybody who's in their way. By journey's end, Andor's path will be to block there. So clearly seeing almost a repetition of what we saw with Jyn Erso, right? Like Jyn had lost her father, Galen, thought he died, was taken by Orson Krennic. He's working on the Death Star, right? He kind of thought his daughter had to make it work there on that planet and try to make a living and survive and scrape and steal and all of that. And then eventually sees that video of her father and completely regresses back to being the young girl and the young daughter and remembering that connection. And that's the thing that finally motivates her to fight, that finally pushes her to consider the possibility of being a rebel. So really interesting. And her life was a bit of a mess as well and all of that. So I wonder how many beats we're going to see that feel similar to Jyn Erso's story in Cassian Andor's story. And certainly Cassian went back and forth with her throughout the movie Rogue One, and then of course at the end. them being together when it all happens, when they pass. The show also focuses on the enigmatic rebel leader Mon Mothma, played by Genevieve O'Reilly, who portrayed her as a young senator in Revenge of the Sith. So nice connective tissue there to the prequels. Then reprised the role in Rogue One. Mothma, who was then played by Caroline Blackiston, was the priestess-like figure in 1983's Return of the Jedi. I'm sure we all remember that one, who outlines weaknesses in the new Death Star, gravely intoning, "Many Bothans died to bring us this information." Remember that as was that the Jedi Alliance or Jedi Council? I think it was the Jedi Council thing, Ken would say. In Andor, her story will run parallel to the title character, whom we know will eventually become one of her key agents. It is a huge orchestral Dickensian ensemble cast, says Gilroy. It's a nice reference to Dickens, who also would write some subversive novels about people in certain lower economic positions fighting against those who were taking advantage of them from financially higher positions. So very interesting stuff as well. And I love that Genevieve O'Reilly is coming back into this. As we saw in the photo earlier, she just looks so regal and noble and strong. Luna remembers the conversation in the car as the moment he was all in. At the end, Gilroy said to me, "You want to take this risk with me, man? It's you and I from beginning to end," says the actor. "It was like you'd been recruited to join a rebel force." I was like, "Yes, of course, man. Yes." Then reality set in. What did I just say? This will be happening in London. My life is in Mexico. Holy shit, what have I done? So natural progression, like you're excited to do something, and then you realize all the implications of doing that thing and how it will upset, not in a negative way, upset the balance of your life for sure. So, some things, like any rebellion, like the creation of anything, you have to sacrifice your own comfort in order to make it happen. So it's nice real life allusions to what we see or might see from his story in the series for sure. It's the theme that binds all the new shows: devotion. What's unique about Star Wars is that we're one story, basically, says Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. George was always dealing with episodes. Ironically, he was serializing his storytelling. He was influenced by Flash Gordon and cliffhangers on Saturdays at movie theaters. All of that informed what the DNA of Star Wars is, which is why I think it's just organic that we made the transition into television. Well, look, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has made it that Star Wars is one story, because when she came in, when they bought it, their focus was to put everything into canon, and everything that was not canon, they gave other names to, like legends and what have you. So clearly she's saying it's all one story, but she has made it all one story just to make it easier for the audience to follow along. Now, it doesn't mean that it's just the movies. That's the other part of this thing. Sure, it's all one story, but yeah, there's a lot here to consume, from Bad Batch to the last season of Clone Wars to the movies to the TV shows to the books. Brotherhood. I just got Brotherhood to the comic books. All of that is in canon. Even the smaller young adult novels you see come in and have a piece of the canon to give more flesh to what's going on. And certainly Mon Mothma has been part of that. Certainly in Bloodline, the one with Leia is discovered to be the daughter of Vader by the entire galaxy. That certainly Mon Mothma plays a strong role into that as well. All right, let's take a moment here to check in with you all. Got 96 of you hanging out with me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Please make sure you hit a like on this video and share it on your social media. I said like and subscribe to the channel down below. I keep doing that final ending. Sorry, I'm just so by rote I say it. But yeah, subscribe down below. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do on here. Do I have any more Streamlabs? Remember, the Streamlabs super chats are open. It is pinned in the chat. It should be in the description of this video. If it is in the description of the video, let me know. But yeah, hit a like. I've got 57 likes, but I got 102 of you watching me right now. So let's go back to the article here as we go through it. And I'm going to take a sip before we keep going here. The transition was not an obvious pivot for an empire built on movies. When she took over Lucasfilm in 2012, Kennedy's primary goal was to rejuvenate Star Wars with a new era of films after a trilogy of prequels that underwhelmed many fans. I don't think you can argue that. I know the prequel trilogy now, a lot of the younger fans are adults now, and they're crowing from the mountaintops how much they loved it. Certainly the Star Wars fandom as a whole has had to reappraise those prequel trilogies. So I totally the prequel trilogy. So I totally understand that side of it, but also the other side of it is there were a lot of us who did not like those movies, and they weren't just made for kids. Cut that nonsense out. 10-year-old kids ain't understanding trade routes. Okay, they were made to peel across multiple generations. No rejiggered or retcon narrative is going to change that. They wanted to appeal to everybody across the quadrants to get them to come see this movie. So anyway, few producers were better poised to do that, given her legacy of crowd pleasers, ranging from E.T. to Back to the Future and The Sixth Sense. By the end of 2015, Han, Leia, and Luke were back on the big screen in J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens, which introduced the desert scavenger Rey, the redemption-seeking stormtrooper Finn, the X-Wing hotshot Poe Dameron, played by a Latino Oscar Isaac, and the brooding Sith wannabe Kylo Ren. Rian Johnson's sequel, 2017's The Last Jedi, continued the Skywalker saga, as it came to be known, but veered sharply from Abrams' vision and seemed to close off some central storylines. Abrams U-turned back when he returned for 2019's final chapter, The Rise of Skywalker, taking over Episode 9 late in development. The movies all earned billions, but the zigzagging narrative was conspicuous. That's for sure. That's for sure. A lot of people still feel they have issues with this. I think with the difference in this sequel trilogy and the prequel trilogy is the prequel trilogy is George Lucas writing it, George Lucas directing all three of those films. There's a through line throughout. You know, there are a couple of changes or with Jar Jar and all of that and the responses. Yes, but overall the storylines seem to be pretty clear. Whether you like the storylines, that's different. They seem to be pretty clear, and through lines are there through all three movies. I don't think the sequel trilogy will have the same kind of love for it because of the warring points of views or the warring storylines that change and were altered and were moved around to fit the reaction from the fans and from the reviewers and critics. So I don't think it'll have the same kind of love. But I do think Rey, and I don't think Kylo and Poe and Finn will live on in the fandom for sure as characters that people love. All this led to the hiatus, which is of course something we've all reported on, a fallow spot in the Star Wars film landscape that Kennedy announced in early 2019, months before The Rise of Skywalker even debuted. Lucasfilm needed to regroup and rethink. We all recognized, every single one of us, that this was a new chapter for the company, that we needed to all work together to create the architecture of where we were going. It's a little bit of retconning there, wouldn't you say? I mean, did they all realize, or did they all recognize? I mean, this is Kathleen Kennedy trying to essentially massage the narrative a little bit to say, oh, we all thought my way was the right way, but we all realized that maybe it wasn't the right way. We all take responsibility for this. When, look, you're the quarterback. Quarterback gets all the blame, and it gets all the credit. And he or she gets all the credit. So it's a little bit of massaging, and I imagine this isn't the last of the massaging we'll see here in this article. Factor in the standalone movies Rogue One and Solo, and the Bay Area production company had been churning out a blockbuster a year, a breakneck pace, considering that Lucas himself only released one Star Wars film every 3 years, with well over a decade between trilogies. Kennedy wanted to dispense with the annual deadline and reconsider everything. The most important lesson they'd learned was this: Star Wars required a greater degree of professional devotion from filmmakers. Anyone who comes into the Star Wars universe needs to know that it's a 3, 4, 5-year commitment, she says. That's what it takes. You can't step in for a year and shoot something and then walk away. It requires that kind of nurturing. Getting something appropriately cosmic prepped for their streaming service's launch became Disney's highest priority. It had to feel as big as the films, so Kennedy turned to a filmmaker. All right, so what are your reactions to this as she says this? Do you guys believe this, what she's saying here? Do you think it was more a matter of the idea that she was, oh, we all realize this, and what she's saying here, we need one filmmaker to nurture it and to do all that. Do you believe that? Or we've seen other franchises thrive with different directors. Hell, the original trilogy has 3 different directors for each of their films and was able to thrive. So I don't think it's necessarily that you need to have one director. What you might need to have is one person in charge of the script overall and where it's going and what had that might. I think that I understand the point she's trying to make, but it's a weird line to walk, because you're like, well, how much forgiveness do I give on this side of things of how she feels about it versus how all of us were feeling about it from the beginning, and what we could see happening on the screen, what we could see in these movies, and see the kind of in not connected storylines or storylines that made no sense, or storylines that really devalued and underappreciated characters throughout those three films, including Finn, Rose Tico and Captain Phasma and a few other characters, General Hux. I mean, that just were not serviced well by what we saw in those films in the sequel trilogy. So yeah, I can see that it's a little bit of retconning for sure. What do you guys think? Do you think it's retconning? Do you think she's kind of turning it around a little bit to make it seem like, oh, it's just kind of things happen and we realize this and it's what do you call it? It's a trial and error situation. Maybe we'll see. Haunted _Autumn says, not much to give. Sorry, I just want to say thanks. Oh, thank you, Haunted. Don't sweat it. I put it out there for people who can. If they want to send something in, they can. It's fine with me. James Petty says, my opinion, the mistake with the sequels was to bring back the original cast. The Luke story ends with Return of the Jedi. They should have just gone forward with new characters. It's not a bad idea. I don't know if they would have. I think it would have been fine. It was fine to bring back Luke, Leia, and Han, but give them something more to do. And I think this is a lesson that hopefully Jurassic World Dominion is learning with bringing back Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum. Of course, Goldblum being back in the last movie, but really bringing them back to be a more of an active part of that film. I think the problem here was that you had to deal with the reality, right? Putting Luke on a planet on Octo by himself, it's fine that he was embittered by what happened. That's fine. Okay. But bring him back into the light. And I think the way they brought him back into the light wasn't satisfying for a lot of Star Wars fans, unfortunately. And logically so. And having two warring points of views between Rian Johnson's and J.J. Abrams, two very strong filmmakers who have a very strong point of view and successful. They aren't terrible filmmakers. They're both successful in what they do, but they are two different types and two different styles, two different approaches, two different narrative approaches to their characters. I think that's where you found incongruity within those sequel trilogy, within those films in the sequel trilogy, and you could have had something more active. But you deal with the reality of Carrie Fisher's physical condition, the reality of how limited she is from the years of abuse on her body, from substance abuse, and just getting older. Harrison Ford is still doing his thing, but he wanted to go, and so did that storyline work? Well, we never found out why. Why does Ben hate Han? Why does Ben hate Leia? Was it just this moment in the hut with Luke? I mean, there should have been more there. And I think that's where they dropped the ball. So, James, bringing those characters back wasn't an issue. They had to find a way to weave them in a way that was organic and was in service of the new characters, but still touched on the nostalgia and the love and the charm that we all have and felt from those characters. I think that was the mistake, James, overall. But but I take your point absolutely, to start over, because certainly the prequel trilogy did, by not having any characters except for our C-3PO and R2-D2 being played by the original characters coming into the prequel trilogy. So that was I understood that. So Ben Rayner, thank you, Ben. He says, thanks for the live stream today, Rocha. Vanity Fair always puts out great stuff about Star Wars. You don't need one director. You need an overall story with a voice and a plan. If you have that, different directors wouldn't make a difference. You're absolutely right, Ben. That's what I think as well. And you just and it's tough to make it all happen. Look, Kathleen, it's as much as we may want to criticize Kathleen Kennedy, that is an incredibly difficult job, to be able to find the right directors to come in to do and tell the story you want to tell. And just like Feige, Feige's getting a little bit of flack now with these phase 4 projects, with these the TV shows and the movies. Like, he's getting a little bit of flack of the fact that we're seeing directors who are trying to do their version of Marvel, but still having to adhere to an overall story to make everything connect and work. It's not easy. And certainly Kathleen Kennedy, for all the possible mistakes you all might claim that she did, I might point out that she made, you still can't argue the results of billions of dollars of profit for the Star Wars franchise and for Disney overall. So, I mean, yes, I agree with you, Ben. A plan, a direction, a clear, concrete idea of what you're doing, with the ability to be flexible about maybe adjusting some of those plot points or storylines to make it work overall, was the better way to go. And clearly in this situation, it did not happen. And that's why I don't think the sequel trilogy will be as beloved as the prequel trilogy as this goes along and as the years pass. Whereas the prequel trilogy, very clearly one person's vision, one person's writing, one person's direction, that really worked. And there's certainly a lot of love. We just celebrated yesterday the 20th anniversary Attack of the Clones, and they're certainly going to celebrate it at Star Wars Celebration. Lewis Barry in here as well saying, hope they keep footage of gore from Thor, Love and Thunder hidden, Toby and Andrew style. Well, sure. And we hope people don't reveal pictures of that for clicks and likes and subscribers. That would be great if people didn't do that. But, we all have our own path that we're walking in this YouTube sphere. All right, let's see. JMB's jumping in and saying, definitely looking forward to Kenobi, but also cautious of overusing Vader since a big part of his mystique is the mystery, especially since it's made to sound like Kenobi and Vader hadn't seen each other since Mustafar, though never explicitly stated. Love to hear your take on this. Thanks. Yeah, JMB. I mean, I'm looking forward to Kenobi as well. And yeah, I don't want to see Vader popping up all over the series. I don't think you introduce those Inquisitors and have Vader be the prevalent part of those episodes. So I agree with you. I think less is more. Less has always been more with Vader in Star Wars. And look, even in Rogue One, right? That one scene, that's all you needed. And you lost your damn mind and held on to the love of Vader from that one scene. So you don't need too much Vader. You just need the right amount of Vader and have it be very memorable every time he shows up. There's a reason people know every line of Vader's lines in the original trilogy and in other locations where he's popped up, and don't necessarily know every line of all those movies, but they do remember the Darth Vader one. So yeah, I think using him sparingly, focusing on the Inquisitors, establishing them, because you can use and go back to the Inquisitors through other projects down the road. So that makes sense to me as well. So good point. You make JB for sure. Let's see if I've got any. Okay, no Streamlabs have come through. So if you want, send those in when you can, and we'll keep going here with the rest of this article. Let's keep going here. Jon Favreau had inaugurated the Marvel. When we left the article, Anthony Bresnikan writes this one line: "It had to feel as big as the films," talking about the launching of the series, the TV shows there on Disney Plus. And Kathleen Kennedy turned to a filmmaker. So now we go to Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau had inaugurated the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Iron Man a decade before, remember that, 2008, and was steeped in large-scale serialized storytelling. The actor and director had also become so proficient with visual effects that his most recent Disney projects, The Jungle Book and The Lion King, were often mistakenly described as live action, even though both are almost entirely digitally simulated. I knew that Jon Favreau was always deeply interested in Star Wars. He was the first person I went to, Kennedy says. He said, not only would I have an interest, I have an idea. Plus, he was willing to meet that new criteria of hers. What's unique about John is his commitment, says Kennedy. He's had a sole focus pretty much on this for the last several years. That's been a godsend. After meeting at Kennedy's office in Santa Monica, Favreau started work without even a contract. I just started writing, he says. So by the time I was officially hired, I had already written the first, I think, 4 episodes. Wow, that's heck of a commitment there for sure. But there was a problem. Favreau's idea was about a Mandalorian, the helmeted tribe of galactic warriors who frequently turn up as mercenaries or bounty hunters. I think I have one on my wall. Oh yeah, I have the poster over there. I'm going to put the Mandalorian poster back up and take down this Empire Strikes Back one. The first and for a long time, the only Mandalorian in the early Star Wars films was Boba Fett. And Lucasfilm planned to make him the central character in a feature film being developed by director James Mangold. That wasn't the problem, although Favreau would eventually pick up the Boba Fett story after Mangold moved on to another Lucasfilm property, directing in Indiana Jones 5. The problem Kennedy faced was that another esteemed creative executive, Dave Filoni, had also devised a series focused on Mandalorians. Filoni is the colorful cowboy hat-wearing mastermind behind many of Lucasfilm's animated shows. He joined the company in 2005 and apprenticed to Lucas himself and developed the Clone Wars with him. Filoni wanted to explore some of the ideas they'd never fully realized. I remember when I did Clone Wars, George came in and said, well, the Mandalorians are pacifists in this time period. I'm like, oh, well, that's very different than what everybody thinks they were. And he was like, well, you've got to remember that people are never just one thing. Cultures evolve and change over time. So seeing this story being told here of Filoni and Favreau having their conversation about the Mandalorian, really fascinating here. And him talking to George Lucas, Filoni and Favreau, talking to Lucas about the Clone Wars, about the Mandalorians, about the progression of everything. So how is that going to play into conversations we're going to be reading about here. Being able to channel the creator makes Filoni indispensable at Lucasfilm. He was a critical part of the company's new TV ventures, and Kennedy had been nurturing his filmmaking ambitions ever since her arrival. Favreau and Filoni were friendly, but Kennedy feared a turf war might erupt. She devised a fix. I arranged a play date, she says. After meeting in Los Angeles, Favreau and Filoni exchanged ideas and drawings for a Mandalorian show that could combine their ideas. They got along instantly like gangbusters, Kennedy says. Filoni's knowledge of Mandalorian history blended with Favreau's lone gunslinger concept. Most importantly, the new partners challenged each other. Favreau's idea for the child was the biggest sticking point. It gave us some pause, Kennedy says. He and Dave debated that quite ferociously. So a really strong conversation there about the debate between both of them. A friend of mine chimed in. I'm not going to reveal who it is. When he read this section of the of this article, he texted me and he said, "This article takes a bit of liberty here. It completely glosses over the fact that the main reason Favreau wanted to do a show about Mandalorians in the first place is because he was the voice of Pre Vizsla in the episode of Clone Wars where Filoni introduced the Darksaber. So that isn't mentioned here in this article, and that is a little bit of, again, retconning or making it seem as Kathleen is the one who made this all happen. And look, this is Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. Male or female, you're going to brand save and you're going to twist a narrative or massage a narrative to make it seem as if you want to take a lot of credit for everything that went down. So who knows? Maybe somewhere in the middle is the truth. I don't know. The child, of course, is the pistachio-hued scene stealer who would melt the Mandalorian's icy bounty hunter heart by becoming the innocent he must protect at all costs. The little one remained under wraps until the debut of the first episode, then instantly became an object of global adoration. His real name is Grogu, but in our world, he is forever Baby Yoda. Honestly, it's something I never would have done because Yoda is Yoda, Filoni says. Yoda's homeworld and backstory were never fully revealed, and Filoni wanted to protect the mystery that Lucas built around the original Jedi Master. Yeah, it must be interesting. As it says in the article here, Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm, they all see Filoni as this, this line to George Lucas. Even though they're not bringing in George Lucas all the time to consult, Filoni is the line to Lucas. And so that's good and can sometimes be a little bit bad as he becomes protective of certain things that have happened there in the past or certain secrets of Lucas's about his characters. So it's probably mostly good, but then the occasional moments where you have to kind of negotiate that if you're going to reveal some things or introduce a new character that is from the same species as Yoda, which they did with Grogu. I think people now look back and think it was like a slam dunk, but we were very cautious, Filoni says, of the child. The amount of measuring, especially in the first season, for how we were framing this kid took a lot of effort. And I imagine they probably did because you're opening the door to a second Yoda. People could have easily rebelled at that and gotten super upset about it for sure. Look how people reacted to the recasting of Solo with Alden Ehrenreich. We'll get to that a little bit later, but Star Wars fans were not necessarily happy about it. The pair spoke with Vanity Fair in a joint Zoom interview, and as Filoni described his initial reservations in one window, Favreau disappeared from another, rustling through papers and returning with sketchings and drawings of Mando and child. One of them, drawn by Filoni himself, showed the baby's hand reaching out of a floating bassinet toward his burly protector. Ooh, I think I've seen that shot before. Most of the other concepts were off-putting, wrinkled, feral, or cartoonish. It's easy to understand Filoni's hesitation. There were a lot of different looks that popped up, and then we got one that finally clicked. It's this drawing, Favreau says, tapping a full-color concept image by artist Chris Alsman, who now emblazoned on countless pieces of merchandise, right, the one I referenced. In it, the child sits in a bulky brown onesie with wide doe eyes and a slightly derpy expression. That's him, this one, Favreau says. He had kind of a goofy, ugly look. We didn't want him too cute. Part of his charm is that you feel a little pity for the guy, like Chaplin's Tramp or Charlie Brown. For you kids, that's Charlie Chaplin, and Charlie Brown is an animated character from the Peanuts who can't kick a football to save his life. There was never an alternate creature suggestion. It's not like we might have gotten crustacean-like baby Akbar on lunchboxes, dolls, backpacks, and t-shirts. Oh man, a baby Akbar show. I don't know, a baby calamari show could be fun. I don't know, throwing out there. And we may never have gotten a child at all if Lucasfilm hadn't solved another, even bigger problem with The Mandalorian. How to create a show that goes to new worlds in every episode without the backbreaking budgetary demands of shipping a crew to the farthest reaches of our own planet. We were making series that were meant to sit alongside our films with a third of the budget and half the time. This is Carrie Beck, a development and production executive at Lucasfilm, who co-executive produced The Mandalorian. While it became a huge success, I feel like everybody's blood, sweat, and tears are on that screen. I have to say, I agree with that 100%. Ironically, the thing that cleared their path was a wall. All right, just taking a break here to take another sip of my drink here. We got 115 of you all watching me right now. Thanks so much for joining me. Please make sure you hit a like on this and subscribe to the channel down below if you haven't subscribed to the channel down below. We do a lot of Star Wars content. You know what? I'm going to leave this up I'm going to leave it up like this. You guys see my face and read along here. But we do a lot of stuff here. All right, Travis, peace. Take care, brother. Thanks for stopping in, my man. Great to see you. But we do a lot of stuff here, including the Jedi Way, which we just dropped our most recent episode last week for you all to watch with me and Laura Kelly talking about our favorite panels that we're looking forward to at Star Wars Celebration. I will be there next week for sure, covering it all and hopefully getting some interviews. We shall see. Simon Section says, I'm excited to see Obi-Wan. However, I was disheartened by the leak rumors of a certain dark character having a fast and furious change of heart and becoming an ally, be it a dead one. I don't know what that means. I don't know. I'd be curious to see. But why are you reading leak rumors, Simon? Why are you ruining this for yourself? You should go in clean, go in pure, and enjoy the show. That's the way that I would do it. That's the way I'm doing it. I'm waiting until they send me the screeners before I dive too deep into to anything, or I look at anything or read anything. Articles like this are a little more broad, so you're not going to get spoilers here. So for me, I would stay off of that stuff. And you don't know what is true and what isn't true for sure when it comes to this stuff. So, try to take it with a grain of salt. All right, let's keep going here because I know there's a little more to run through. I mean, there's a bit more to run through, and then we're going to wrap up. Oh, my God, there is a bit more to run. All right, let's run through this, and let's keep going here as we talk about this all. All right, let's keep going here. This next, the cluster of bulky beige buildings in Manhattan Beach, a South Bay community near Los Angeles. I've eaten in Manhattan Beach a number of times. Looks as boring as any warehouse district. They are the khaki pants of architecture. Inside at least two of these sound stages, however, are portals to other worlds. After The Mandalorian debuted in late 2019, Lucasfilm's special effects division, Industrial Light Magic, began to reveal details of the colossal curved LED wall they call the volume that can envelop a film crew as effectively as any location shoot, generating an environment that's convincingly photorealistic even to a digital camera. There's no need to ship a crew and props and actors anywhere. Everywhere can be brought to the studio. With 3 volumes now in LA, 1 in London and 1 in Vancouver, film and TV creators are just beginning to discover its capabilities. The glow of dusk or dawn can last the whole workday if necessary. You can freeze the sun, or if you're shooting something set on Tatooine, you can freeze 2 of them. Very funny 2 suns joke. Back in 2018, when The Mandalorian was first being planned, the tech was unsteady. Richard Bluff, supervisor of ILM's environment department, had spent much of his career building virtual backdrops and knew the volume, which ILM officially calls stagecraft, could be just what The Mandalorian needed. Now, we'll get a little bit of background about how they shot The Mandalorian and how they were doing things today. If you've seen those behind the Mandalorian videos on Disney Plus, you can really see more of how they shot The Mandalorian using the volume and how incredible this technology actually is. Without it, the show would either be too costly to produce or too chintzy to impress. I like chintzy being used. The turning point came in the spring of that year when one of the most famously exacting directors of all time stopped by. James Cameron came to visit, Bluff says. He was next door working on the Avatar sequels in his water tank. John had asked us to display on the monitors the test we'd shot earlier in the day. By the way, if you've seen the incredible footage from Avatar Way of Water, the underwater stuff is phenomenal. And a girl I used to date at Universal Studios, she is one of the actresses who body doubles there in the water as one of the Na'vi. So I wonder if I'll be able to recognize her in all the blue makeup. We shall see. This footage featured a Mandalorian stand-in pacing around the dilapidated ruins of an abandoned building, littered with debris and stained by water damage, with walls peeling like dead skin. The structure really exists and sits on Angel Island in San Francisco Bay, but the building's location had been scanned and imported to the LED screens, and the bounty hunter and his mirror-like armor seemed to have been transported into a decaying room. If anyone on Earth could see the seams of the effect, it would be Cameron. I remember distinctly Jim taking off his glasses and leaning close to look at the quality of the image and how convincing it was, Bluff says. I think for everybody, that afternoon was the eureka moment because it was working. Yeah, that's great to know. For 4 years later, the volume is an essential everyday tool. During a visit in mid-March, it conjures a rocky gray cavern with cliffs embedded with large tech components. Whatever this place is, it's been colonized. Of course, that's what happened in Avatar. On the flat ceiling of the studio, you can see the craggy roof of the cave with a rough opening that lets light pour down from a circle of blue sky. There's less clutter than other sets and virtually no dust. There's no smell of fresh paint, sculpted foam, or freshly cut lumber. The volume has the sterile ozone scent of a Best Buy as millions upon millions of tiny light-emitting diodes embedded in the curved surface evoke alien landscapes. Favreau shows off the stage like a man opening the hood of a newly restored classic car. Asked if the technology allows them to make a full season of television in the same amount of time as a Star Wars or Marvel movie, Favreau shakes his head. No, it's like half the time. That's pretty incredible. And there's a shot of the volume there with Deborah Chow and Favreau and Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy. So yeah, I'd shown that earlier for those of you who've been watching since the beginning. So great shots there. One of the first outsiders to see the volume was Pedro Pascal. When the actor was recruited by Favreau to lend a flinty presence to the Mandalorian's anti-hero, I knew that it was an ace in the hole. I just knew, Pascal says, and I haven't been surprised by any of it. Maybe I've been a little surprised by how compelling the Mandalorian can be because he's faceless. But that had been a selling point for him, too. The character, later revealed to be named Din Djarin, is such a hardline devotee to Mandalorian rules that he scrupulously keeps his helmet on in the presence of others. That means Pascal can sometimes play the role as a voice actor while a stand-in wears the armor, which frees him up to accept other projects. Maybe I'm a little bit of a commitment phobe, he says, because the coolness of it really excites me and the lifespan of it really intimidates me. I could absolutely understand that. And maybe some people will leave him alone about the fact that he is not in the armor the whole time. For God's sakes, the man is delivering an incredible performance. And yes, we should absolutely credit the actor who is playing him in the body armor and scenes that he is not in the body armor for sure, because that he's conveying physically what you're hearing Pedro say or not say when he's having some of these fight sequences. All right, Star Wars actors tend to become Star Wars actors for life, that's for sure. In the late 90s, this led McGregor to agonize over playing the young Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel movies. I really questioned it a lot, he says. I felt like I was part of this new wave of British cinema, really. That's for sure, with Trainspotting and everything that was going on there in the 1990s, Four Weddings and a Funeral. There's a lot of British stuff. Shallow Grave, that was going back in the 1990s that people wanted to be a part. I think Shallow Grave's 1990s, I think. And that Star Wars wasn't me. That's not what I stood for. I was this sort of urban, grungy, independent film actor. Yeah, like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels around this time as well. The late Sir Alec Guinness notoriously looked down on the space saga when he played the wise old man in the original films. McGregor says he did too, especially after his first installment, 1999's The Phantom Menace, suffered punishing reviews. He says it was hard because it was such a huge decision to do them, such a big event. It was quite difficult for all of us to deal with that, also knowing you've got a couple more to do. So yeah, can only imagine what that must have felt like. You debate committing yourself to it. You go in and you play this iconic character, which of course all your acting tools are being used to be able to bring someone who is such a legendary character back to life in a younger version. You're somehow still evoking Alec Guinness, but creating your own interpretation of him as a younger person. It must have been a daunting task for him as a new actor in 1999. This is like, 20 years ago now? So a little over 20 years. So what that must have been like at the stage of his life as an actor for Ewan McGregor must not have been easy at all. And so to get bad reviews like they got, and of course, I personally am one of those people who does not like Phantom Menace, must have been very debilitating in a lot of ways. McGregor was relieved to put the franchise behind him, but in 2017, he was invited to the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood for a marathon screening of every Star Wars film. They asked me if I'd want to introduce one, and I've never done anything like that, but suddenly it just struck me that I really did want to, McGregor recalls. Why had his feelings changed? I don't know, he says, scratching a scruffy cheek. I really do think it has to do with growing up. He enjoyed seeing people in sleeping bags, pulling an all-nighter with his movies. Kids who'd grown up with the prequels weren't as cynical as the critics. A few reviewers had even begun to reappraise them. People loved him as Obi-Wan, which made McGregor realize that he did too. I will say this: he is the best part of the prequels, in my opinion. I don't know if everyone was fall in love with Hayden Christensen again, but for me, it was Ewan McGregor who was really the consistently good part of it. And if you go back and find an old Jedi Council episode, my first appearance when they were still kind of hollowing out the studio, I had to do a pitch to Christian and Mark Ellis about wanting Obi-Wan Kenobi to come back and be a part and have his own series. So even back then, and all of us were feeling, listen, all of us have felt that way about Kenobi, that we'd wanted Ewan McGregor to come back. But even back then, I was pitching the idea of a series. You can go find that episode. I don't know where it is, lost in the annals of Jedi Council. Lucasfilm intended to make Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, wait. I don't want to jump. Oh, okay. After the screening, McGregor started to get asked the question nearly every time he gave an interview. Would he ever consider playing Obi-Wan Kenobi again? McGregor was always answered in the affirmative, which is good politics, but not a contractual obligation. The only time the question really mattered was when McGregor was asked by Lucasfilm's then head of story, Kiri Hart, about 4 years ago. She just said, "We just want to know if it's true. You said you'd do it again. We want to know if you mean it." McGregor recalls, and I said, "Yeah, I do mean it. I would be happy to do it again." And so just like that, the ball starts rolling. Lucasfilm intended to make Obi-Wan Kenobi as a movie to be directed by Oscar nominee Stephen Daldry. Oh, nice choice. McGregor would be a producer this time, giving him more say over the story. I just said I think that it should be a story about a broken man, a man who's lost his faith, he said. He always has a funny line to say or always seems to be calm and is a good warrior or soldier or whatever. But to see that man come apart and see what gets him back together again, that's where we started. And look, we've seen numerous stories like that through the decades of film and television. But even more so now with the advent of the opening of the conversation of mental health, the opening of the conversation of PTSD, of things that people suffer through, ramifications of events and moments and losses, and how that can affect people's psyche and their emotional constitution. Now that we're exploring that more and more and talking about it more in the mainstream, it's great to see these shows kind of taking these storylines on with that extra level of confronting what it must be like to have lost his mentor, his brother, Padme, and the war at the end of that entire trilogy. What does that do to somebody? So I like that they're exploring that here, almost like a soldier, right, with PTSD coming out of the war, what he had to do and what he or she endured, echoes with them for a long time if they don't come to terms with it. When the Obi-Wan film later evolved into an Obi-Wan TV series as part of Lucasfilm's new yearning for Disney Plus content, Daldry departed, and Deborah Chow, director for The Mandalorian, came aboard with the goal to keep the series cinematic in scope. There remained one missing component. McGregor's prequel co-star Hayden Christensen had been Anakin Skywalker to his Obi-Wan, brother in arms until their brutal battle on a lava flow in Revenge of the Sith. Still, in the early iterations of the Obi-Wan in Exile story, Vader wasn't included. Whoa, that is interesting to know. It's an ongoing conundrum at Lucasfilm. How much should they showcase legacy characters and how much should they keep them in reserve? Would introducing Vader to a story about Obi-Wan's exile detract from their fateful meeting on the Death Star in 1977 Star Wars when Vader strikes down his old friend? Or could a previously unknown encounter actually enhance that moment? We have these what-if conversations 24/7, says Michelle Rejwan, an executive producer of Obi-Wan and one of the company's lead development chiefs. It's fun to, in your head, peruse the Star Wars toy store. Oh, we could have this character or feature that ship. But at the end of the day, we really need to keep it pure about why. In the fall of 2019, Chow sat in Christensen's living room asking him to return as the most fearsome tyrant in the galaxy. My God, 2019, ladies and gentlemen. 2019, we weren't even remotely in a place to consider that. Logs crackled in the fireplace. A cup of herb, lemon, and ginger tea steamed in Chow's cup. Vader, she told Christensen, would add a new dimension that could ultimately reframe the way fans look at their classic duel in the original movie. At the time of the meeting, it had been 14 years since Revenge of the Sith, and the actor assumed his galactic glory days were done. And really, he wasn't doing much in terms of acting during this time as well. I think the prequel trilogies really did a number on both Christensen and Natalie Portman. He was happy to be wrong. This is a character that has come to define my life in so many ways, he says. was originally hired to play a very specific portion of this person's life. Most of my work was with Anakin. And now I get to come back and explore the character of Darth Vader. Yeah, must be thrilling for a character, for an actor to, all right, I played this character at this stage in their life when they were Anakin Skywalker. And now I get to play him as Darth Vader with all the destruction and devastation and emotional pain inside of him. And, we saw in that battle with Ahsoka Tano in Rebels that a piece of him still connects to the old Anakin and uses it when he needs to use it, which is kind of chilling at times, certainly in that battle. Technically, you don't need Christensen for Vader. For sure, all you need is the mask, hulking figure in the suit, and if you're lucky, James Earl Jones's imperious voice. But you do need Christensen to show the audience the hot-headed but compassionate man who was lost when Anakin Skywalker became Vader. A lot of my conversations with Deborah were about wanting to convey this feeling of strength, but also coupled with imprisonment, Christensen says. There is this power and vulnerability, and I think that's an interesting space to explore. Certainly, that sounds exciting. As well as an actor, hearing those words, it really does excite you, the challenge of something like that. When Chow became the showrunner, she championed a rematch between Vader and Kenobi as the Lucasfilm Brain Trust mulled whether to go that route. Meanwhile, sound stages had been booked in England and then canceled as the story underwent more internal scrutiny, sparking fears from fans that the show itself might go away too. In March 2020, shortly before the lockdown, the decision was finalized. Vader would return. Part of Chow's successful perspective on why Vader and Kenobi should face each other again may surprise even the most ardent Star Wars fans, especially those who think of the two as harboring an epic contempt for one another. For me, across the prequels through the original trilogy, there's a love story dynamic with these two that goes through the whole thing, Chow says. I felt like it was quite hard to not include the person who left Kenobi in such anguish in the series. What intrigued her was the idea that despite what Vader had become, Kenobi might still care deeply about him. Damn, that's nice. I like that. I don't know how you could not, she says. I don't think he ever will not care about him. What's special about that relationship is that they loved each other. Well, that's going to be fascinating for me to see here in the series now. I have to say, I have to stop here at this moment because I didn't anticipate that. I thought it'd be, more about broken hearts and you betrayed and blah, blah, blah. But the idea that Kenobi could still love Anakin, could want to bring Anakin back from the dark into the light, still could love him enough to accept the fact that he chose this path. And certainly when we see Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, he has accepted that Anakin is Vader. And he has accepted his path is to train Luke to one day bring balance to the Force and maybe even in the long run, as Luke does, bring Vader back into the light at the end before his passing. So in a way, A New Hope is almost like the end of Kenobi's journey, mission, which after Anakin turns to Vader is bringing Vader back to being Anakin again, which is, I don't know, kind of emotional for me to think about because I always love that moment. And it makes me cry every time I watch Return of the Jedi when he says, I have to save you. And he says, you already have. That is, even talking about it, I'm trying to keep the tears down because that scene is one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars. And I know it was a very funny thing that they made fun of in Chasing Amy, which I thought was great, but you can enjoy that, making fun of it, but also enjoy that scene as well. And the emotions that are in that scene that are so well built over those 3 movies to have that moment between Luke, a confident, powerful Luke, looking upon his father's face for the first time in his entire life, and his father looking upon Luke and seeing that his son has taken the best elements of him and is going to live a better life than he did. Which is also why the Acto decision is a little tough for me to accept. Anyway, all right, let's see. Do I have any more Streamlabs or super chats that have come through? I'm just checking real quick. Oh yeah, Ryan donated. Thank you, Ryan. Said the ST will never be the sequel trilogy will never be beloved to the level of the prequel trilogy because Disney has dropped everything sequel trilogy era. By this time, in relation to the prequel trilogy, we already were getting the Clone Wars movies. There is no Clone Wars to fix the sequel trilogy the way the Clone Wars fixed the prequel trilogy. Ryan, that's an excellent point. You're absolutely right, Ryan. There is no sequel trilogy series yet to fix that. And I wonder if maybe Kathleen Kennedy is just going to chalk that up to a learning or to a lesson, and not necessarily see it as the prequel trilogy as Lucasfilm did in the past, and try to redeem it with the Clone Wars animated series. So you might be right. Well, time will tell, Ryan. Time will tell as those movies, go forward in time. If people look back and see like, oh, maybe, this is the better, maybe we can reappraise it or whatever. So we shall see. We shall see. No, I'm not going to cry it out. I'm not going to let the water flow. But yeah, keep sending in your Streamlabs super chats. It's pinned in the chat. It's in the description of the video here. Send in your support. If you're enjoying me, kind of reading this article for you and going through the points and everything and responding to it. And I want to hear from some of you as well, as you comment on it as we go through, because we're almost done here. I think we've got just a couple more or just a few more paragraphs, and then we're wrapping this up. All right. I'm going to take another sip before we jump into the last section here. While Luna is the kind of actor who huddles in the backseat of a car, hiding his Star Wars call from a probably oblivious driver, bullshit, not with Star Wars. Rosario Dawson is the type who FaceTimes her friend's 8-year-old kid while in costume as alien force seeker Ahsoka. Her full blue and white head, tails, frame. Ooh, let me read this all over. Let me read this. This is a long run-on sentence here by Bresnikan. Hold on. While Luna is the kind of actor who huddles in the backseat of a car, hiding his Star Wars call from a probably oblivious driver, Rosario Dawson is the type who FaceTimes her friend's 8-year-old while in costume as alien force seeker Ahsoka. Her full blue and white head tails framing burnt umber makeup and white warrior markings. There we go. I got there. I called my friend Polina because her son Cosmo is a huge fan of Star Wars. Knows every ship, every robot, says Dawson. My nephew is like that. He has like a crap ton of Lego Star Wars ships and characters and all of that he loves. He sees me and throws the phone across the room, just freaked out. I've gotten ice cream with this kid. We've hung out, but it was too much that this character he loves was starting to talk to him and said his name. She calls me back the next day and goes, Cosmo just walked into the room and he told me he's ready now. I said, well, that's very sweet, but I'm no longer in costume. His moment is missed. She shrugs. That will be a life lesson for him moving forward. Yeah. My people, man, we're always teaching. We're always teaching, my people. Dawson has the same enthusiasm for Star Wars as Cosmo. Her casting as Ahsoka Tano, who previously was voiced by Ashley Eckstein and existed only in animation, was the result of a fan suggestion that Lucasfilm took seriously. Someone tweeted Dawson a piece of art depicting her as the heroine, and she responded, yes, please. That made its way to Filoni, who had been working with Favreau to include Ahsoka in both The Mandalorian and later The Book of Boba Fett. His ultimate goal was to give Ahsoka her own TV series. In October of 2021, after Dawson had shot guest spots, she read a trade report about Christensen possibly joining her standalone show. Anakin Skywalker had been the character's mentor, and Vader's memory would understandably still haunt her. Dawson took a screenshot of the headline and opened Instagram using the characters' nicknames for each other from the Clone Wars as a caption. I just posted, Sky Guy, they know, see you soon, Snips. Only later did she realize that the report was just an unconfirmed rumor. Fans took her post as hard confirmation, and the powers that be at Lucasfilm were distressed. I looked in my email, and Star Wars was like, you might want to take that down, Dawson remembers. I'm like, man, I can't be trusted. Such a great thing. Ahsoka will appear on Disney Plus in 2023, though Lucasfilm, eager to reclaim secrecy, still won't confirm if Dawson had inadvertently leaked the truth about Anakin or if it really was a false report. Wow, just throwing that in the mix there. As with every Star Wars title, emotions and nostalgia are wrapped up in this series. Filoni, who's overseeing the show, helped create the title character with Lucas and watched her become a touchstone to young girls who were drawn to Snips as the first lead female in the Jedi Order. The quest Ahsoka has hinted at in her guest appearances on The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, hunting an Imperial Grand Admiral named Thrawn, who vanished into deep space at the conclusion of the animated Rebel series, is likely to be explored further. Although plot details are still being tightly held, Ahsoka is a continuous story, Filoni offers. It is definitely driving toward a goal in my mind, as opposed to being little singular adventures. That's what I want the character to be doing, and I think that's what fans want now. They have such a relationship with her. I've only recently started to understand what all those kids that watch Clone Wars are now a lot old. I've only recently started to understand that all those kids that watch Clone Wars are now a lot older. They're very excited about all the things they grew up with, as they should be. To keep minting fans, Lucasfilm must give new generations their own collection of characters to love and hate, and not every classic character can be brought back endlessly anyway. Kennedy is well aware of all of this now. In The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, Mark Hamill delivered performances as 30-something Luke Skywalker, but younger actors played Luke's body while advanced deepfake technology replaced the face. Bringing Luke to life is now a team sport, but that tech has its limitations. So does recasting. All right, let's get into the Solo situation. The 2018 movie Solo explored Han Solo's younger years, with Alden Ehrenreich taking on the role of the smuggler originated by Harrison Ford. The film has its admirers, certainly Laura Kelly, Ken Knapsack, a few other people I know love Solo Star Wars story. I certainly enjoy it. I know the people over at the Resistance broadcast, they are massive fans of Solo and took these comments that I'm about to read very personally. And I've seen a number of tweets about these comments. Even my friend Brian Ward, who's designed the graphics for the Outlaw Nation in the past, he posted Alden Ehrenreich, a gif of Alden Ehrenreich laughing with no context, but you got what he was trying to say. The film has its admirers, but it made less at the box office than any other live-action Star Wars movie. Solo's swagger may be too singular for another actor to replicate. There should be moments along the way when you learn things, says Kennedy. Now it does seem so abundantly clear that we can't do that. So I think that's a bit of a reframing of what actually happened here. It's not a smart idea to change horses, not even midstream, but almost just as you're about to get across the river. And that's what I think happened here. And that's why there's a bit of resentment or frustration from a lot of people who are fans of the Solo film, because they feel that Kathleen Kennedy is essentially removing her blame about what happened in this situation and putting it on Alden Ehrenreich and the fans, that the fans themselves didn't enjoy Alden Ehrenreich as Solo. And I'm not saying there aren't some fans who didn't. There are certainly fans who didn't like him, don't think it's the right portrayal, don't think he's actually Han Solo, don't buy him as a young version of Han Solo. But also to say that certain characters can't be recast is kind of weird timing, considering we're about to get a Kenobi series where a number of the characters, Owen, Beru, Vader, Obi-Wan, were recast there in Star Wars. So just an interesting thing to be saying here, rather than just saying, look, we went a certain direction, we made some mistakes here, I take ownership of that. And in the future, we might revisit recasting, or look at the possibility of constructing a better movie. But to blame Alden Ehrenreich, or to blame the fans for not accepting Alden Ehrenreich, I think is completely wrong. And with a lot of people on this, because there was so much madness around that movie from the announcement on. Like, a lot of people did not want a young Han Solo story. Certainly Mark Ellis was vocal about the fact that we didn't need a Solo film. He wasn't a fan of it, from what I remember. And then when the casting came through, a lot of people didn't know who Alden Ehrenreich was and didn't really see him as Solo. Then you start with Lord and Miller, who, in my opinion, have never done a bad project, are replaced when they're almost done with the film. And Ron Howard is brought in to essentially homogenize the movie and deliver a good to decent film, a decent to good film. It's not a bad film, but it's not a great film. Certainly better, in my opinion, than Phantom Menace, or better than The Rises. I tell you what, I will watch Solo quicker than I will see The Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker. It's certainly better than Rise of Skywalker. I don't think it's better than The Last Jedi, but I would certainly see Solo before I'd see Phantom Menace or Rise of Skywalker. But I love Force Awakens, so no one's going to touch that. That's in the top 5 for me. But to blame it on him, I think, is completely wrong. There were a lot of mistakes made around that movie, or to blame it on the fans not accepting it. And I think the smarter move would have been for Kathleen to kind of accept responsibility here. But, the way this works is always, as I said, it's Hollywood, it's brand saving. We saw Chloe Zhao come out and say, my movie didn't suck. Y'all just didn't get Eternals. And, it's always brand saving, because it's always about protecting the legacy. And I don't care how progressive or liberal or whatever you are, there's still very much the idea of ego in Hollywood. And a lot of that is revolving around protecting legacy and defending and sometimes fooling yourself into thinking you had less to do with it and less blame than other people. So it's the way it is. It's unfortunate, but I think she should absolutely have come out and said, we made some mistakes here, even though she does say there are moments to learn things, which is nice rephrasing of not saying mistakes. But it just seems like there should have been a more magnanimous approach to this. Speaking about Solo, to endure, Star Wars will need new actors, new characters, and a new era. That's for sure. Vaulting away from the timeline as we know it, another upcoming series, The Acolyte, reportedly starring Amanda Stenberg, aims to do that. The show is in the casting phase, but the writing is largely complete, says showrunner Leslie Headland, co-creator of the time-looping Netflix show Russian Doll. She has been planning for it for 2 years, mostly from the confines of her home. Her dog and cat, who peek in curiously from the background of Zoom conversations, are certainly steeped in the concept of the galaxy's High Republic era, she says, but casual Star Wars fans who haven't been following the recent novels and comics might still be unaware. Real quick. Sorry. We've got a number. Do we have some streamers? Oh, sorry about it. Let me roll through these before we get into the final part here. And let me know your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy's issues about Solo. Let me know if you're sending in Streamlab or Super Chat. I'll read it here on the show. We're almost done. Haunted _Autumn comes back and says, Kenobi loving Anakin is what excites me about this series. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I got emotional reading it, man. It fixes canon rather than retconning, in my opinion. Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan once thought as you did. We haven't seen him try to really save Anakin yet, in my opinion. Yeah, so we'll see down the road if that's what we get in the series, which again debuts next week. So we're right around the corner. Simon Section says, would you ever consider watching a Finn Solo streaming series post Rise of Skywalker, regardless of how much money they dump on John Boyega? Yeah, I would absolutely watch a Finn series for sure. I think John Boyega is a fantastic actor. To me, those characters survive the uneven approach that was had for the sequel trilogy. I would love a Rey series. I would love a Rey trilogy. I would watch a Kylo Ren series, going back and maybe casting someone who looks like Adam Driver to play the teenage Adam Driver who ends up having these adventures with Luke Skywalker, and then eventually the disillusion of that relationship and the dissolution of his relationship with his parents. So casting, ironically, a young Han Solo or a Harrison Ford looking Han Solo and Leia. I would be down with that. I don't have the issues that other people do have about recasting these characters. It's a little, to me, it's a little bit of ownership that you don't actually have. Studios have the right to recast and redo. We're just about to celebrate Doctor Who coming back. A lot of people going crazy that David Tennant and Catherine Tate are coming back as Doctor Who and his companion. And that's bringing back the old actors to play it again, right? But we've had how many actors play Doctor Who since David Tennant walked away from the series? So the idea of recasting is never an issue for me. It's about recasting with the right energy, the right person. Look, I was really, really nervous when they were going to recast Kirk. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 other characters that are in the echelon for me of favorite characters in movies and TV series, and Captain Kirk is in the top bracket. And so the idea of bringing in a new actor to play him as a young man, I was like, no way, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to capture William Shatner. And Chris Pine came in and did a phenomenal job. I mean, I was watching a little bit of Star Trek Beyond yesterday that was on TV, and I was like, yeah, I got to rewatch this movie because I want to reappreciate him as Kirk in that film. Even though I don't think it's the best of the 3, I still would love to go back and revisit it. So, yeah, I would totally be down to see a Finn series, see a Rey series, see a Poe Dameron series. Oh, absolutely. I would love to see a Poe Dameron series, considering everything that happened in the sequel trilogy and the lessons he learned and the growth he had. It would be fun to see, and especially seeing how great he was in Moon Knight. Look, the series itself maybe 100% didn't hit the mark, but I thought Oscar Isaac was certainly a big part of it for sure. Haunted _Adam also comes back, says, I meant the Kenobi Vader rematch potentially fixes canon rather than retconning it, as so many people seem to fear. That's true. It could fix it, and it could be a positive way to fix it that people enjoy for sure. So, all right, there we go. Let me hide your comment. Thank you, Haunted. I appreciate it. John Rocha, does William Shatner still have you blocked on Twitter? He does. Never joke about the man's divorce. One of the biggest mistakes We did on Cinephiles. We had no idea our social media guy was going to tag him, and he did. And apparently his people who read Twitter clicked on it, watched that video, and were super upset, and they blocked us. So be it. And it's a shame. It's heartbreaking for me, but, it's life. I've been blocked by worse, for sure. All right, let's move on here and finish out this and send in your questions, thoughts, and comments, because we're going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes as I finish this. The Acolyte, Headland says, takes place roughly 100 years before the Phantom Menace. A lot of those characters haven't even been born yet. We're taking a look at the political and personal and spiritual things that come up with in a time period that we don't know much about. My question when watching The Phantom Menace was always like, well, how did things get to this point? How do we get to a point where a Sith Lord can infiltrate the Senate and none of the Jedi pick up on it? Like, what went wrong? What are the scenarios that led us to this moment? That's a great way to approach it. Headland describes The Acolyte as a mystery thriller set in a prosperous and seemingly peaceful era when the galaxy is still sleek and glistening. We actually use the term the Renaissance or the Age of Enlightenment, she says. Jedis are not always aesthetic monk-like figures living selflessly and bravely. The Jedi uniforms are golden and white, and it's almost like they would never get dirty. They would never be out and about. The idea is that they could have these types of uniforms because that's how little they're getting into skirmishes. Interesting. Another new series on the horizon doesn't even have a title, just a code name, Grammar Rodeo, a reference to an episode of The Simpsons in which Bart and his schoolmates steal a car and run away for a week using a phony educational event as an alibi. The show takes place during the post-Return of the Jedi reconstruction that follows the fall of the Empire. Wait, I've never heard of this show. The show takes place during the post-Return of the Jedi reconstruction that follows the fall of the Empire, the same as The Mandalorian, but its plot remains a secret. It's created and executive produced by director John Watts and writer Chris Ford, who made Spider-Man Homecoming. For Marvel, a casting notice is called for children. Oh, that's right. I remember this. That's right. For 4 children around 11 to 12 years old. Inside Lucasfilm, the show is being described as a galactic version of classic Amblin coming-of-age adventures films of the 1980s. That leaves the question of what's happening with the Star Wars movies. So, this will be interesting. This may be why John Watts stepped down from directing Fantastic Four, because he's got so many irons in the fire right now, and there's a lot of pressure to do a Star Wars series. And doing a Star Wars series while you're also trying to resuscitate a franchise that hasn't done well in its previous 2 iterations is a lot to ask of one person. So maybe it was just time for him to kind of take a break. All right. Let's finish up. Last paragraphs here. We have a roadmap, Kennedy says, talking about the movies. Although Lucasfilm's big screen return is unlikely to follow the same relentless cadence as before, a movie from Jojo Rabbit's Taika Waititi and 1917 screenwriter Christy Wilson Cairns will likely arrive first, with Rogue Squadron from Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins further off. Yeah, that was delayed. Remember, that was delayed. I still don't know if she's going to come back. I believe like she won't come back, but you never say never with Star Wars for sure. But I'm looking forward to a Taika Waititi, Christy Wilson Cairns combination, because I loved it 1917. Is it true that Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige will produce a Star Wars film? I would love to see what movie he might come up with, Kennedy says. Wow, that's not a commitment at all, saying yes. But right now, no, there isn't anything specifically. All right, so maybe it had been reported, but right now she's saying there's nothing specifically. And of course, take this, always deny until it happens, right? And Joaquin said, no one spoke to me about the Joker for months. And then one day, hey, I'm the Joker. So, that's the way it goes. And the trilogy from The Last Jedi's Rian Johnson that was announced 5 years ago, backburnered. Rian has been unbelievably busy with Knives Out and the deal that he made at Netflix for multiple movies. Now, again, that is branding. They know they're not going to go forward with Rian Johnson trilogy. So they're going to put it on the back burner because his name still gives people, some Star Wars fans, facial tics. Some people defend The Last Jedi. The last thing you want to do is bring someone back who splintered the fandom with his movie to come in and try to do their trilogy right now. Now, it doesn't mean that 20 years down the road or 10 years, 15 years down the road, Star Wars doesn't revisit the idea, or Lucasfilm doesn't revisit the idea of doing a Rian Johnson trilogy. But as we're seeing now, the prequel trilogy is being reappraised all over the place for the last few years, and certainly now getting a Kenobi series with Hayden Christensen coming back, which a lot of people thought was never going to happen because people were divided about those movies and divided about his performance. Time heals all wounds. And as Ewan McGregor said earlier in this article, I think it was just about growing up. And so maybe people have to kind of grow up and move past what happened with The Last Jedi, reappreciate it, and then Rian Johnson can come in and do a singular trilogy, maybe create all new characters, and do his approach to Star Wars that's not necessarily tied into an overall arc or story or universe that he has to currently connect to. So I mean, maybe the what we get from Ryan. But I said that I've been saying this for years on a number of shows that I thought after that movie there was no way they were going to do his trilogy, at least at the time, like currently, because you're just asking to split the fandom even more, and it doesn't make sense as a business and as a brand. It doesn't make sense. So. All right, the emphasis on television is already influencing the upcoming film slate. I hesitate to use the I hesitate to use the word trilogies anymore because Star Wars is much more persistent storytelling. Well, that makes sense for Kennedy to reframe it that way, because that way she's not tied to making trilogies. And if one happens to pop up organically, then so be it. Like the first 6 Star Trek movies, if I can invoke Star Trek, of the original series, right? 2, 3, and 4 is the trilogy within the 6. So it's very interesting. It's kind of organic trilogy that popped up there as they were telling their overall stories. Now she just needs to recruit feature filmmakers. On March 19th, Kennedy and Lucas received the Milestone Award from the Producers Guild of America, and something happened to her while watching the video montage. The clips of the pair over the decades, including a shirtless Lucas in a squirt gun battle with Steven Spielberg, and Kennedy and Lucas joking around in a production disrupting downpour. What I was so taken with is how much fun we were having, she says. It amounted to this moment of realization. I do think a little bit of fun has gone out of making these gigantic movies. The business, the stakes, everything that's been infused in the last 10 years or so. There's a kind of spontaneity and good time that we have to be careful to preserve. I keep holding on to it better be fun. After more than 50 years with Lucasfilm navigating a new path, that's as good a lodestar to follow as any. And there you go. That's the end of the article. And I agree. Fun is interesting. Fun is exciting, but you can have fun when the stakes aren't as high. Now that the stakes are as high, you are unfortunately subject to the expectations of this fandom, which, by the way, funds your salary, funds these movies, pays these actors, pays these directors, is the ticket going, is the merchandising, is all of that. So, unfortunately, that's the truth. You want to get there. And when you get there, because you're making so much money, there's now a massive amount of expectation. So it doesn't mean you can't have fun. It doesn't mean you can't take chances, but don't be surprised when the fun you take or the chances you take blow up in your face if they're not well received by the fandom. Because the same fandom that blows it up is the same fandom is going to love it if you get it right and crow about it from the mountaintops if you get it right. So this is the perils, and it's great to want that. But the truth is this machine is way too big. But it doesn't mean they can't have little offhand stories, little offhand projects that bring you back to the fun of Star Wars for sure, and have fun within their movies and their TV series. There's certainly a lot of fun to be had for a lot of people in that finale of Book of Boba Fett, even though it wasn't my favorite thing. Having him, ride a Rancor for a lot of people was a lot of fun. So, you can satisfy some people and still have fun within the elements of the series. All right, that's the article, the entire article. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Thanks for all the Streamlabs and Super Chats. Let me stop the screen there. Really appreciate all you guys taking the time to hang out with me. I am 2FlyCam said, hey, John, very excitedly waiting for more Geek Buddies Star Wars coverage, but will you ever address politics again? Would love to hear your thoughts on the Buffalo tragedy replacement theory BS. Cheers. I am 2FlyCam. I told you that the nation is coming. I put the logo out there. The nation is going to be what does that, but I might be doing that just on Twitch. So if you want to follow me on Twitch, the Outlaw Nation on Twitch, I will be doing it there. I'm trying to keep this channel fully entertainment focused, fully entertainment based. It doesn't mean that I won't spin off, because we've been talking about spinning off the wrestling show into its own thing. So it doesn't mean I won't spin off and do a John Rocha Politics or Impolite Truths channel on its own. That's a possibility down the road. And certainly events that have happened recently are starting to push me in that direction. But brother, I'm doing so many things, man. It's just the idea of, spending even more time, and I'm gaining weight. I'm not losing weight, which is really frustrating for me. So it's affecting my overall health and affecting my overall looking at myself. Like there's a piece of me that doesn't want to go to Star Wars Celebration because I don't want to see people to see me at this shape that I'm in now, which is heavier than I've been in a long time. And it's frustrating for me, but I also enjoy doing this. So it's finding that balance. And it's not always easy. If I keep taking on more of a workload, where will I find the time to work out? Because it's not about finding the time. It's the fact that I'm exhausted at the end of the day all this talking, all this editing, all this recording, because remember, I do everything myself pretty much. I book the guests, I come up with the content, I write my stuff, I record my stuff, I edit my stuff. Graphics are done by Brian Ward now. Tushka Productions, with all the new graphics have come in, which is really kind of Jake Yacovetta has done the overlay. Certainly the graphics are not anything I do. Although I do all my thumbnails. So it's exhausting, my man. If I had a Patreon that, was in the thousands, I could afford to have a thumbnail person, an editor all the time and all of that, but I don't. And so unfortunately that's where I'm at right now. And maybe that's something I need to take a look at down the road of putting that as a goal for my Patreon to get to a certain level so that I can fund having editors and thumbnail people and even people who do the description really well to generate more views on my content for sure. So we shall see. I have to like him, but I hear and I appreciate you asking, because Doreen and I had an exchange on text last week about all the stuff that's happening. And certainly there was this feeling of possibly wanting to open the door again. We shall see. All right, let's see. We've got some super chats that came through. I want to make sure I read them all before we roll on out of here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Ben Rayner, come in. Thanks, Ben. He said, I agree with you, Rocha. It was a lot going on, and Alden Ehrenreich wasn't to blame. Don't forget, it came out right after Infinity War as well. That's a good point. That's a great point, Ben. Solo movie, in my opinion, is in the middle of the pack for me. Personally, I did buy Alden as Solo. Huh? Totally. That's, I said, it's a personal decision, a personal thing, whether you bought Alden as Solo. And certainly there are many people who defend Alden as Solo and some people that don't like it. But I respect it. And you're absolutely great point to bring up the fact that Infinity War was right around the same time as Solo, and that there was a lot going on that was X factors to the whole thing. J&B says, a tangent, but Disney related. Any chance of doing an Encanto watch along on Twitch, maybe? Watched it recently. It's now my favorite Disney cartoon. That's a great idea. Actually, last night, I was having conversations with my patrons on our Hangout, and I was talking to my friend Sean Wingblade about, because he does my Twitch overlays, about, doing a standard template for Twitch for me to start doing more watch-alongs on Twitch and even more watch-alongs with my patrons. And I think next week we're going to do a Top Gun watch along on Tuesday night, which I'm going to announce tomorrow. And if people want to join the Patreon at a certain level, you'll get you'll get the link to hang out with me and watch the movie with me. Like, I'll have it on the screen, but an unlisted video for only the people who are patrons to watch. So that is very much a possibility. But yeah, on Twitch, certainly we can't bring the movie up, but I've certainly thought about doing that on Twitch for a number of films. And once I figure out how to put a code, like a time code on there so people can pick up and follow along whenever we're watching, then I'm absolutely going to do that. So there will be announcements about that coming real soon. So I got an itch in my eye. All right. Anything more that has been sent out? Okay, cool. That's it. All right. Well, thank you all so much. A Warlock says, I'm sick of hearing about any political or social news. Sometimes entertainment news is what I need. It's the escape us fans all cherish. Impolite truth is no longer necessary. Well, that's not true, A Warlock, but I hear what you're saying. Maybe softer terms than no longer necessary. I'm just saying that is, I think, pointing out and highlighting some of the things that are going on in our country is not a negative. But yes, I'm trying to focus on just entertainment news and entertainment stuff here on the channel. But thanks all so much for joining me here. I know we went to an hour and 37 minutes. For those of you who are watching later on, I appreciate you enduring it. I don't know how I can time code this. Maybe, kind of watch through, hit the Solo, maybe hit the Ahsoka conversation and the Vader and the Kenobi. I will try to time code this for people. We shall see if I can. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me here today. Please hit a like on this video, share it on your social media with the hashtag The Outlaw Nation so more people discovered. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, maybe you're new, visiting, wanted to hear the article, hear my points of views, have it read to you, hit that subscribe button as well, and hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do on the Outlaw Nation channel. Come and follow me on Twitch, The Outlaw Nation. We're so close to crossing 1,000 followers on Twitch. I need to be doing more on Twitch, and I will be doing more on Twitch for sure. And also come and follow me on my social media at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And come follow me. Where else? Oh, and come listen and go and listen to my podcasts the Geek Buddies, the Cinephiles, and the Top 10, all out there for you to enjoy. Don't forget, a new Geek Buddy show will be coming up tomorrow or Thursday for you all. And yes, we're gearing up for Kenobi, and I will be covering Star Wars Celebration. I will be there, so come and follow me for all that content as well. And maybe I'll have exclusive Patreon content to kind of lure people to be part of the Patreon as well. All right, you all are awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate you hanging out with me as I read this thing. I read it for the first time with you all. All of that was the first time, except for the first couple of paragraphs. Everything else I was reading for the first time, so I reacted to it in time. Great to hear that we might be getting Mandalorian later on this year or possibly early in 2023. We've got Ahsoka next year. We've got Acolyte coming at some point. The Rian Johnson's films were back-burnered, and Kathleen Kennedy's thoughts on Solo and Alden Ehrenreich. So a lot of newsworthy elements coming out of this thing. But more than anything else, it's great to have Star Wars back in our lives again and have all these series coming that we're going to enjoy. And on a personal note, having so many Latino people, Latinx, Latino, Latinas, Hispanics be a part of Star Wars means the world to me. I've said this on Twitter already twice today, but letting you all know, but if you followed me from far, far away to Jedi Alliance, to the Jedi Council, to Collider Movie Talk, to my channel, to the Jedi Way with Laura, and anything I did on SEN, I always spoke about the need for representation of more Latinos in Star Wars. We are going with you to the future. Ain't a fucking thing you can do about it. So it's about time you put us in it. So seeing 3 Latinos on the cover of Vanity Fair, along with Ewan McGregor there as Obi-Wan, was just a seminal moment in my life as a Latino geek, a Latino nerd. And seeing that coming up there was just such a joy. And yeah, I got emotional seeing it. It took a moment. I had a bit emotional seeing it because I'm an older person now, and things like that move me, especially when I've been banging the drum for so long. And I had colleagues and fans and people and commenters tell me to stop talking about it so much. They tell me to stop bringing it up so much. And even took me off videos in the past because they were afraid of the reaction of having someone bringing up the idea of needing more representation in certain projects, franchises, or in Star Wars included. So I endured all that shit for the last few years, and it's great to see that Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Disney understand the importance of including such talented Latino actors and actresses in these projects. So very, very happy and looking forward to it. Kenobi coming out real soon, 27th. Get ready, everybody. All right, I love you madly. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Share this, as I said, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new live episode here, impromptu, of the Outlaw Nation. Peace, and may the Force be with you.